The massive space station called Harmony Point floated peacefully between three star systems. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports. Today was special. The Galactic Council was holding its yearly cultural exchange meeting. Representatives from across the galaxy had come to share stories about their greatest heroes and legends. Ambassador Lisa Carter walked through the station's gleaming corridors. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat style that made her look professional. Behind her followed two other humans. Dr. Kevin Blake carried a tablet full of Earth's historical records. His gray beard and kind eyes made him look like the teacher he had been before joining the diplomatic corps. Commander Jake Murphy walked silently beside them. His military uniform was perfectly pressed, and his steady gaze missed nothing around them. The main conference hall was enormous. Thousands of seats faced a central stage where each species would present their cultural treasures. Lisa had seen many alien species before, but the variety still amazed her. The Vorthak looked like giant lizards walking on two legs. Their scales were dark green and seemed to absorb light. The Zephyrians appeared to be made of living crystal that changed colors as they moved. The Chitauri resembled massive insects with too many eyes and clicking mandibles. Speaker Zarthok of the Vorthak stepped onto the stage first. His voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. He spoke of the ancient Vorthak warriors who could breathe plasma hot enough to melt starship hulls. These legendary fighters had conquered entire solar systems using only their natural fire breath and razor-sharp claws. Holographic images showed Vorthak ancestors breathing streams of superheated gas that turned enemy ships into molten metal. The audience murmured with appreciation. Several alien species nodded their heads in respect. The Vorthak legends spoke of real power that could destroy worlds. Next came Crystalline Velnara of the Zephyrians. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. She told stories of Zephyrian lightbenders who could become completely invisible. These warriors could bend photons around their bodies and strike enemies who never saw them coming. The holographic display showed ghostly figures appearing and disappearing, while devastating enemy forces with attacks that seemed to come from empty air. More appreciative sounds came from the audience. The Zephyrian legends were clearly based on their species' natural ability to manipulate light wavelengths. Queen Voice Clixandra of the Chitauri clicked onto the stage. Her communication was a series of rapid clicks and buzzes that the translation system converted to words. She described the great Chitauri hive generals who could control millions of warriors with perfect coordination. These legendary leaders had connected their minds to entire armies, creating battle formations that moved like a single organism. The holographic display showed vast swarms of Chitauri moving in perfect unison across battlefields. The alien delegates seemed genuinely impressed by each presentation. These were legends based on real abilities that each species possessed in some form. Then it was humanity's turn. Dr. Blake stepped onto the stage with his tablet. He smiled warmly at the diverse audience before beginning to speak. His voice was calm and friendly as he shared Earth's greatest legends. He told them about Achilles, the warrior who was nearly impossible to kill in battle. He described King Arthur and his knights who protected the innocent and sought the Holy Grail. He spoke of Beowulf, who fought monsters with his bare hands to save entire kingdoms. Blake also mentioned American legends like Davy Crockett, who could shoot the eye out of a needle from 100 yards away, and Daniel Boone, who explored unknown wilderness territories despite constant danger. The holographic display showed human warriors in various time periods performing incredible feats of courage and skill. Blake concluded by mentioning more recent legends about human soldiers who had performed impossible missions during various wars throughout Earth's history. For a moment, the hall was quiet. Then Speaker Zarthok began making a sound that the translation system labeled as laughter. Other Vorthak joined in, creating a rumbling noise like an earthquake. Soon, Crystalline Velnara was producing the high-pitched ringing sound that Zephyrians made when amused. The Chitauri began clicking rapidly in what could only be described as insectoid laughter. Within minutes, most of the alien delegates were openly laughing at the human presentation. Speaker Zarthok's voice boomed across the hall. "Primitive fantasies," he declared. "These are clearly made-up stories to compensate for your species' obvious weaknesses." Crystalline Velnara's voice chimed in agreement. "Humans have no special abilities. You cannot breathe fire, bend light, or share minds. These legends prove that your species is delusional about your own limitations. Queen voice Clixandra added her opinion with rapid clicks. Your legends are evidence that humans create fictional heroes because you cannot produce real ones. Dr. Blake tried to explain that human legends were different from alien ones. He said they were meant to inspire people to be better than they thought possible. But his words only made the aliens laugh harder. Ambassador Carter felt her face getting warm with embarrassment. She had to maintain diplomatic relations, but the mockery was becoming insulting. She glanced at Commander Murphy, who had remained perfectly still during the entire presentation. His face showed no emotion, but she noticed his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Speaker Zarthok raised one massive clawed hand for silence. Perhaps, he said with obvious amusement, the humans would like to demonstrate these legendary abilities? Surely if your stories have any basis in reality, one of your representatives could show us these mythical powers. More laughter rippled through the audience. Lisa felt trapped. If she declined the challenge, it would confirm humanity's weakness in the aliens' minds. Earth's reputation in the Galactic Council would be damaged for years. But accepting seemed like walking into certain humiliation. Commander Murphy stepped forward. His movement was smooth and controlled, like a predator deciding to hunt. I accept the challenge, he said quietly. His voice was calm, but there was something in his tone that made several alien delegates stop laughing. Lisa looked at him with surprise. Murphy had never spoken during diplomatic meetings before. He was just supposed to provide security. Speaker Zarthok's large yellow eyes focused on the human soldier. Excellent, he rumbled. Tomorrow we will see if human legends have any truth to them. As the meeting ended and delegates began leaving, Lisa wondered what Murphy was thinking. She knew he was a decorated war hero, but challenging the combined alien species seemed like suicide. Murphy stood perfectly still, watching the aliens file out of the hall. His expression revealed nothing, but deep in his mind he was already planning. The next morning came too quickly for Lisa's comfort. She had barely slept, worrying about what Murphy had gotten himself into. The conference hall buzzed with excitement as word of the challenge had spread throughout Harmony Point. Delegates from species that had not even been at yesterday's meeting were now filling the seats. Speaker Zarthok stood at the center of the stage, his massive form casting long shadows. His scales seemed darker today, and his yellow eyes glowed with anticipation. Beside him stood Crystalline Velnara, her crystal body shifting through different shades of blue and purple. Queen voice Clixandra completed the trio, her multiple eyes scanning the crowd while her mandibles clicked softly. Commander Murphy sat in the front row between Lisa and Dr. Blake. He looked exactly the same as always. Calm, alert, and completely unreadable. Lisa had tried to talk him out of this during breakfast, but he had simply nodded and continued eating his meal. Speaker Zarthok's voice filled the hall. Yesterday we heard amusing stories about human legends. Today we will discover if these tales have any connection to reality. His tone made it clear he believed they did not. The Vorthak leader gestured to a massive holographic display that appeared above the stage. It showed 3 different testing environments. We have designed 3 trials. Each will test the core abilities that our species value most highly. The first image showed what looked like a military firing range, but much larger and more complex. Targets made of various materials were scattered across a landscape that included mountains, valleys, and structures. The first trial tests raw destructive power, Zarthok explained. The ability to overcome obstacles through pure force. This is the foundation of Vorthak strength. The second image displayed a maze-like structure filled with sensors, cameras, and automated defenders. The walls seemed to shift and change as they watched. Crystalline Velnara's voice chimed like bells. The second trial tests stealth and precision. The ability to move unseen and strike with perfect accuracy. This demonstrates Zephyrian superiority. The final image showed a complex battlefield with hundreds of moving pieces, vehicles, defensive positions, and what appeared to be thousands of small units scattered across a wide area. Queen voice Clixandra's clicks translated to words. The third trial tests tactical coordination, the ability to control multiple elements simultaneously for maximum effectiveness. This proves Chitauri excellence. Dr. Blake leaned toward Murphy and whispered, Jake, these tests are designed for their natural abilities. Humans can't breathe plasma, become invisible, or control minds. Murphy's response was barely audible. I know. Speaker Zarthok continued his explanation. Each species will demonstrate their legendary capabilities. Then the human representative will attempt the same trials. He paused, and Lisa could swear she saw amusement in his reptilian features. Of course, we understand if the human wishes to withdraw rather than face certain failure. The alien audience made various sounds of agreement. Several delegates were already discussing how entertaining the human's failure would be. Lisa felt her diplomatic training taking over. She stood up smoothly and addressed the gathering. Ambassador Carter of Earth formally accepts this challenge on behalf of humanity. However, we request clarification on the rules and safety protocols. Crystalline Velnara responded with musical tones. The trials are conducted in advanced simulation chambers. Physical harm is minimized, but the challenges are real. Failure will be obvious to all observers. Queen Voice Clixandra added her clicks. Each participant may use tools and equipment appropriate to their species' capabilities. The trials measure natural talent, not artificial enhancement. Lisa nodded professionally, but inside she felt sick. The aliens were essentially offering to let Murphy use human weapons and equipment, but that seemed like giving a knife to someone fighting a dragon. A new voice spoke from the back of the hall. The human representative requests permission to contact Earth Command for consultation. Everyone turned to see Murphy standing. His request was unusual but not unreasonable. Speaker Zarthok waved one massive claw dismissively. Granted. Though we fail to see how consultation will improve human performance. Murphy left the hall without another word. Lisa and Dr. Blake followed him to a secure communication room in the human diplomatic section. The encrypted channel connection took several minutes to establish. When Admiral Pete Harrison's face appeared on the screen, his expression was serious. Murphy quickly explained the situation. Admiral Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Jake, you know I can't order you to do this. It's not officially military business, I understand, sir. But Earth's reputation in the Council is at stake. The Admiral nodded slowly. Then you have full authorization to show them what humans are really capable of. He paused. But Jake, don't get yourself killed proving a point. No intention of dying today, sir. After ending the communication, Murphy sat silently for several minutes. Lisa finally asked the question that had been bothering her since yesterday. Jake, what exactly are you planning? These aliens have natural abilities that humans simply don't possess. Murphy looked at her with those steady gray eyes. Lisa, you've read my service record. What do you think I've been doing for the past 15 years? She had read his file, though much of it was classified. She knew he had been involved in impossible missions that somehow succeeded. She knew other soldiers called him a legend, but she had assumed those were just military exaggerations. Dr. Blake spoke up. The aliens don't understand what human legends really mean. They think our stories are about supernatural powers. Murphy nodded. That's their mistake. They returned to the conference hall to find it even more crowded. Word had spread throughout the station, and now hundreds of beings from dozens of species had come to watch the human failure. Speaker Zarthok announced that the trials would begin in 1 hour. The time would be used to prepare the simulation chambers and allow each participant to ready themselves. As the alien representatives left to prepare, Murphy remained seated. He appeared to be meditating or perhaps reviewing something in his mind. Lisa noticed that other humans on the station had begun arriving. Station Security Chief Amy Foster took a seat nearby. Engineer Ben Cooper and Medic Nick Davis found places in the crowd. Dr. Blake leaned over to Lisa. I think Jake has a plan. Lisa watched the commander's calm face. I hope so, because if he fails, Earth becomes a laughingstock for the next century. Murphy opened his eyes and looked directly at her. Lisa, have you ever read The Legend of David and Goliath? She nodded, confused about why he was asking. The giant had better weapons, better armor, and superior size. David had a slingshot and the right strategy. Murphy stood up and straightened his uniform. Sometimes legends aren't about being stronger. They're about being smarter. As he walked toward the preparation area, Lisa finally understood why Murphy had volunteered. He wasn't planning to match the aliens' natural abilities. He was planning to show them something they had never considered. That humans didn't need supernatural powers to be legendary. The question was whether that would be enough to win trials designed for species with capabilities humans could never match. The simulation chambers were unlike anything Lisa had ever seen. The room was massive, with walls that seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. Advanced holographic projectors could create any environment imaginable, complete with realistic physics and genuine consequences for mistakes. Thousands of observers filled the viewing galleries that surrounded the chamber. The noise of different alien languages mixed together into a constant buzz of excitement. Most of the crowd expected to see a human embarrass himself and his entire species. Speaker Zarthok entered the chamber first for the power trial. His massive form looked even more intimidating in the artificial sunlight of the simulated environment. The testing ground stretched out before him, a landscape of reinforced barriers, armored targets, and defensive structures that would challenge any warrior. General Mordak, the Vorthak military representative, stepped forward to demonstrate what true power looked like. His dark green scales began to glow with internal heat. When he opened his mouth, a stream of superheated plasma erupted like liquid fire. The first barrier was made of reinforced steel 3 feet thick. Mordak's plasma breath hit it dead center and melted through it like butter. The molten metal dripped and pooled on the ground, still glowing orange with heat. The second target was a mobile defense platform equipped with energy shields. Mordak circled it like a predator, then unleashed a concentrated blast that overloaded the shields and turned the entire platform into scrap metal. For the final demonstration, Mordak faced a fortress structure designed to withstand orbital bombardment. His plasma breath carved through the outer walls, melted the support beams, and caused the entire building to collapse in a shower of sparks and debris. The alien audience erupted in cheers and applause. Several species made sounds of genuine awe at the display of raw destructive capability. Speaker Zarthok's voice boomed across the chamber. "This is the power of Vorthak legends made real. Let us see how human mythology compares to actual ability." Commander Murphy entered the chamber carrying standard human military equipment. His weapon was an advanced assault rifle with various attachments, but compared to breathing plasma, it looked pathetic. He also carried a pack filled with devices that most aliens did not recognize. The crowd grew quiet, waiting to see the human fail spectacularly. Murphy approached the first barrier, identical to the one Mordak had melted. Instead of trying to destroy it with brute force, he walked around it slowly, examining the construction. He pulled out a small device and scanned the barrier's structure. After 2 minutes of analysis, Murphy placed a tiny explosive charge at a specific point near the base of the barrier. The explosion was barely audible compared to Mordak's plasma display. But when the smoke cleared, the entire 3-foot-thick barrier had toppled over. Murphy had found the exact stress point where the barrier connected to its foundation. One small charge in the right location had accomplished the same result as melting through 3 feet of steel. For the mobile defense platform, Murphy used a different approach. He fired several shots that seemed to miss the target completely. The alien observers began making sounds of derision, but Murphy's shots had not been aimed at the platform itself. He had targeted the ground around it, creating a specific pattern of small craters. When he fired one more shot at the platform's base, it triggered a cascade failure in the unstable ground beneath it. The platform fell into the crater Murphy had created and became completely immobilized. The alien laughter grew quieter. For the fortress, Murphy spent nearly 10 minutes studying the structure before acting. He placed small charges at 3 specific locations that looked completely random to the observers. When the charges detonated simultaneously, they triggered a controlled collapse that brought down the entire fortress with minimal explosive force. The chamber fell silent. Speaker Zarthok's voice carried a note of confusion. "The human has accomplished the objectives, but these are merely clever tricks, not demonstrations of true power." Murphy looked directly at the Vorthak leader. "With respect, Speaker Zarthok, achieving the same result with less effort is superior to using more force than necessary." The second trial began immediately. Crystalline Velnara entered the chamber, which now displayed the stealth and precision course. The maze was filled with motion sensors, heat detectors, visual scanners, and automated defense systems. Velnara's crystal body began to shift and change, bending light around her until she became nearly invisible. She moved through the maze like a ghost, avoiding sensors and striking targets with perfect accuracy. Her natural ability to manipulate light wavelengths made her essentially undetectable to most scanning systems. She completed the course in 12 minutes, hitting every target without triggering a single alarm. The alien audience again showed their appreciation with various species-appropriate sounds of approval. Murphy entered the same maze carrying different equipment. He had no ability to become invisible, no natural camouflage, and no way to bend light around his body. What he did have was patience. Murphy spent the first 5 minutes of his attempt simply watching and listening. He observed the patterns of the scanning systems, noting the timing of sensor sweeps and the blind spots in coverage. Then he began to move. Instead of trying to avoid the sensors completely, Murphy created false signals. He used small devices to generate heat signatures in different locations, making it appear that multiple intruders were moving through the maze. The automated systems became confused, chasing phantom signals while Murphy moved through gaps in their coverage. For the precision targets, Murphy used angles and ricochets that the course designers had not considered. He bounced shots off walls and barriers to hit targets from directions the sensors were not monitoring. Halfway through the course, Murphy did something that surprised everyone. He deliberately triggered one of the alarms. The alien observers assumed he had made a mistake, but Murphy's action was calculated. When the alarm sounded, automated defensive systems began moving to respond to the perceived threat. This created new blind spots and changed the sensor patterns in ways that Murphy had predicted. Used the chaos of the defensive response to reach areas of the maze that would have been impossible to access while the systems were operating normally. Murphy completed the course in 18 minutes, slower than Velnara, but he had accomplished something she had not. While moving through the maze, he had also identified and disabled 3 backup security systems that the course designers had not even mentioned. When Murphy emerged from the maze, he was carrying small devices he had removed from hidden locations throughout the course. Crystalline Velnara's voice chimed with surprise. "How did you detect the backup systems?" "They were shielded against all known scanning methods." Murphy's answer was simple. "I looked for things that seemed out of place and asked myself why they were there." The alien audience was no longer laughing. Confused murmurs spread throughout the viewing galleries. The human had not matched the alien's supernatural abilities, but he had achieved the same objectives through methods that seemed impossible to predict. Dr. Blake leaned over to Lisa in the viewing area. "He's not trying to copy their abilities. He's showing them a completely different way of thinking." Lisa nodded, finally understanding Murphy's strategy. The aliens expected humans to fail because they were comparing human abilities to alien capabilities. But Murphy was demonstrating that the comparison itself was flawed. Speaker Zarthok's voice carried a note of irritation. "The human continues to use tricks and devices rather than demonstrating legendary abilities." Queen voice Clixandra's clicks seemed more rapid than usual. "The final trial will determine if human legends have any validity. Tactical coordination cannot be achieved through cleverness alone." Murphy stood quietly in the center of the chamber, showing no emotion at all. But Lisa noticed that his 3 friends, Amy Foster, Ben Cooper, and Nick Davis, had moved closer to the chamber entrance. The final trial was about to begin, and Lisa suspected that Murphy had been planning for this moment since the challenge was first issued. The simulation chamber transformed into the most complex battlefield Lisa had ever seen. Mountains, valleys, rivers, and urban areas stretched to the horizon. Thousands of small units moved across the landscape like pieces on a massive chessboard. Vehicle formations, defensive positions, and mobile command centers created a war game of incredible scope. Queen voice Clixandra entered the chamber surrounded by her tactical interface systems. Her multiple eyes tracked dozens of different information streams simultaneously while her mandibles clicked in rapid sequences that coordinated the movement of virtual forces. The demonstration was breathtaking. Hundreds of Chitauri drones moved in perfect formation across the battlefield. They responded to Clixandra's mental commands with precision that no individual consciousness could match. Flanking maneuvers developed instantly. Supply lines adjusted automatically. Defensive positions reformed to counter enemy movements before those movements were even completed. The Chitauri hive mind coordination was like watching a single organism with thousands of parts working in perfect harmony. Every unit knew exactly what every other unit was doing. There was no confusion, no miscommunication, and no wasted effort. Within 20 minutes, Clixandra had achieved total victory across the entire battlefield. Her forces had surrounded and defeated enemy positions that should have taken hours to overcome. The display of tactical coordination was flawless. The alien audience responded with sounds of amazement. Several military observers from different species were taking notes, clearly impressed by the demonstration of Chitauri's strategic superiority. Queen voice Clixandra's clicks translated to words filled with confidence. This is the power of true coordination. Individual minds working as one with no confusion or weakness caused by separate thinking. Speaker Zarthok nodded approvingly. Now let us see how the human attempts to match abilities he cannot possibly possess. Murphy had been standing quietly at the edge of the chamber during the demonstration. When his turn came, he made a request that surprised everyone. I need my team. Clixandra's click sounded amused. You may coordinate with other humans if you wish. Though we fail to see how multiple individual minds can match a true hive consciousness. Amy Foster, Ben Cooper, and Nick Davis entered the chamber. The alien observers seemed confused by this choice. Foster was a communications specialist, not a general. Cooper was an engineer, not a strategist. Davis was a medic, not a warrior. Against the coordinated power of hundreds of units, 4 humans seemed laughably inadequate. Murphy gathered his team in the center of the battlefield. Instead of using complex technological interfaces like Clixandra, they formed a simple circle and began talking. Amy, I need you to monitor all communications and coordinate information flow, Murphy said quietly. Ben, analyze the terrain and infrastructure. Find advantages we can exploit. Nick, keep us all alive and watch for threats we might miss. Foster nodded and activated her portable communication suite. Frequencies clear. Multiple channel monitoring active. Cooper pulled out scanning equipment. Terrain analysis starting. Looking for structural weak points and defensive opportunities. Davis checked his medical kit and survey equipment. Team health monitoring active. Threat assessment beginning. The alien observers watched this simple preparation with growing confusion. Where was the advanced coordination technology? Where were the command and control systems? The humans seemed to be relying on nothing but talking to each other. The trial began. Murphy's team spread out across the battlefield, but not in the organized formations the aliens expected. Instead, each human began operating independently while maintaining constant communication with the others. Foster found an abandoned communication relay and quickly modified it to intercept enemy transmissions. Cooper discovered that one of the mountain passes had unstable geology that could be triggered to block enemy movement. Davis identified several locations where enemy forces were vulnerable to supply line disruption. But what amazed the alien observers was how the information flowed between team members. Foster would report enemy movements and Cooper would immediately suggest how to use terrain against them. Davis would identify a threat, and Murphy would coordinate a response that incorporated information from all 3 sources. The humans were not thinking as one mind like the Chitauri. Instead, each person contributed their individual expertise while trusting the others to do their jobs. When Cooper needed to focus on engineering problems, he trusted Foster to watch for communications threats. When Davis was treating a simulated injury, he relied on Murphy to handle tactical decisions. This was not hive mind coordination. This was something the aliens had never seen before. Individuals choosing to work together while maintaining their separate identities and capabilities. Halfway through the trial, something went wrong. Alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. The simulation systems displayed critical errors as the battlefield scenario began collapsing. What had been designed as a safe training exercise was turning into a real emergency. Simulation malfunction. Crystalline Velnara's voice chimed with alarm. The safety protocols are failing. Computer-generated explosions became real energy discharges. Holographic debris turned into actual falling objects. The environmental controls began creating real atmospheric dangers instead of simulated ones. The alien participants immediately began evacuating. Clixandra's drones shut down and retreated to safe positions. The observation area started emptying as species representatives fled the dangerous chamber. But Murphy's team did not retreat. Ben, can you stabilize the main power coupling? Murphy called across the chaos. Working on it! Cooper shouted back while diving toward a sparking control panel. Amy, I need you to reroute communications through backup systems. Foster was already moving, her equipment adapting to the emergency. Nick, we've got injured aliens trapped in Sector 7. Davis grabbed his medical kit and ran toward the danger zone without hesitation. On my way. Murphy coordinated the emergency response while simultaneously trying to reach Speaker Zarthok, who had become trapped under a fallen piece of equipment when the simulation chamber began collapsing. The massive Vorthak leader was unconscious and bleeding. Murphy and Davis worked together to stabilize his injuries while Cooper jury-rigged an emergency power system to prevent further system failures. Foster coordinated with station emergency services to guide rescue teams to other trapped aliens. For 30 minutes, Murphy's team risked their lives to save alien delegates who had been mocking human capabilities just hours before. They moved through dangerous areas, ignored personal safety, and focused entirely on protecting others. When station emergency crews finally arrived, they found that the 4 humans had single-handedly prevented what could have been a disaster, affecting hundreds of beings. Speaker Zarthok regained consciousness to find a human medic treating his injuries. Nick Davis looked up from his work and smiled. "You're going to be fine, sir. Just stay still while I finish these bandages." The massive alien stared at the small human who had risked his life to save an enemy. For the first time in decades, Zarthok was speechless. As the emergency teams evacuated the injured and secured the damaged chamber, the alien delegates began to realize what they had witnessed. The humans had not won the tactical trial through superior coordination technology or hive mind thinking. They had won because when crisis struck, their first instinct was to help others instead of protecting themselves. Queen Voice Clixandra's clicks were softer now, almost confused. The humans abandoned their own safety to assist those who had shown them no respect. Crystalline Velnara's chimes carried a note of wonder. They chose to risk everything for the welfare of beings they barely knew. As medical teams carried Speaker Zarthok to the station's hospital, the massive Vorthak looked back at Murphy. "Why?" he asked weakly. "Why did you save me?" Murphy's answer was simple. "Because that's what humans do." The chamber fell silent except for the sounds of emergency equipment. For the first time since the trials began, no alien delegate was laughing at human capabilities. Instead, they were trying to understand how a species without supernatural powers consistently produced individuals who would risk everything to do what was right. 3 days later, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. Speaker Zarthok sat in his chair with bandages still visible on his massive frame. His yellow eyes, once filled with amusement at human weakness, now held a different expression entirely. The conference hall was quieter than usual. Word of what had happened in the simulation chamber had spread throughout the station and beyond. Delegates who had been ready to dismiss humanity as inferior were now struggling to understand what they had witnessed. Ambassador Lisa Carter stood at the speaking podium, but the attention of the room was focused on Commander Murphy, who sat in the front row exactly as he had days earlier. His expression remained calm and unreadable, as if risking his life to save aliens was just another normal day. Dr. Kevin Blake had been invited to address the council about human legends and their true meaning. He looked out at the diverse alien audience with the same kind smile he had worn before, but now they were listening with genuine interest instead of mockery. "Honored delegates," Blake began, "I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of human legends. You have compared our stories to your own cultural narratives about natural abilities and supernatural powers, but human legends work differently." He activated the holographic display and showed images of various human heroes throughout history. Achilles was not invulnerable because of magic. He was legendary because he chose to fight for his friends even knowing he would die. King Arthur was not powerful because of a magical sword. He was great because he tried to create a just society even when it seemed impossible. The images changed to show more recent examples. Davy Crockett was not supernatural. He was a normal man who chose to stand and fight at the Alamo when he could have run away. These legends document real human capability, the ability to choose courage over safety, sacrifice over selfishness. Queen Voice Clixandra's clicks were slower and more thoughtful than before. But how do ordinary individuals develop such capabilities? Chitauri are born with hive mind coordination. Zephyrians naturally manipulate light. Vorthak breathe plasma. What creates human heroes? Blake smiled. That is the most important question you could ask. Human heroes are not born different from other humans. They are created through training, experience, and, most importantly, choice. He gestured toward Murphy. Commander Murphy volunteered for this challenge not because he has supernatural abilities, but because his training and experience taught him that sometimes ordinary people must do extraordinary things. With council permission, Blake began sharing previously classified information about Murphy's military record. The alien delegates listened in growing amazement as they learned about mission after mission, where Murphy and other humans had accomplished impossible objectives through courage, intelligence, and determination. The siege of Titan Colony, Blake explained, where Murphy held a position against overwhelming odds for 6 days until civilian evacuations were complete. The rescue mission on Kepler Station, where he led a team through a damaged reactor core to save trapped scientists. The diplomatic extraction from the Proxima riots, where he protected non-combatants while outnumbered 50-1. Crystalline Velnara's chimes carried a note of confusion. But these achievements seem impossible for individuals without enhanced abilities. Murphy finally spoke from his seat. They were not impossible. They were just very difficult and very dangerous. He stood and faced the alien delegates directly. Every human military teaches the same principles. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting despite fear. Leadership is not commanding others. It is taking responsibility for their welfare. Honor is not winning. It is doing what is right even when it costs everything. Speaker Zarthok leaned forward in his chair. You are saying that human legends document achievable capabilities rather than fantasies? Exactly, Blake confirmed. Our stories preserve examples of what humans can accomplish when they choose to be their best selves. They are training guides, not entertainment. The massive Vorthak was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in a voice that carried no mockery. In 3 days of reflection, I have realized something troubling. Vorthak legends celebrate our powerful warriors who conquered enemies and claimed territory, but we have no legends of Vorthak who sacrificed themselves to save their enemies. Velnara's crystalline form shifted through several colors before she responded. Zephyrian stealth masters are praised for their ability to strike without being detected, but we have no stories of lightbenders who used their abilities primarily to protect others. Clixandra's clicks were barely audible. Chitauri Hive generals are honored for their efficient coordination of forces, but our legends contain no examples of leaders who risked everything to save individual minds that disagreed with the collective. The conference hall fell silent as the implications became clear. The alien species had natural abilities that humans could never match, but their legends celebrated the use of those abilities for conquest, dominance, and self-interest. Human legends, despite describing weaker individuals, consistently focused on sacrifice, protection, and moral choice. Dr. Blake spoke gently. Different species value different things, but perhaps there is something humans can share that might be useful. Ambassador Carter stepped forward. Earth hereby offers to establish cultural exchange programs with any interested species. We would be honored to share our military academies, leadership training programs, and ethical frameworks with delegates who wish to understand how ordinary individuals can learn to make extraordinary choices. The response was immediate. Delegates from dozens of species began requesting information about human educational systems, military training, and philosophical traditions. Speaker Zarthok struggled to his feet, still weak from his injuries. The Vorthak Imperium formally requests access to human military academies. We wish to understand how your species produces individuals who choose honor over survival. Other delegates quickly followed. Crystalline Velnara asked about human rescue service training. Queen Voice Clixandra requested information about human leadership development programs, but the most surprising request came from a delegate in the back of the hall. Representative Tormek of the usually silent Graven spoke for the first time in recorded council history. The Graven Collective has observed human behavior for many cycles without understanding. We request permission to send young Graven to study at human institutions. We wish to learn how individual choice can create results superior to collective efficiency. The session continued for hours, as species after species requested information about human training methods. They wanted to understand how a species without natural advantages could consistently produce individuals capable of legendary achievements. As the formal meetings ended, smaller groups of aliens gathered around Murphy and his team. They asked detailed questions about human military training, emergency response procedures, and the philosophical frameworks that taught humans to value others' welfare above their own survival. Murphy answered their questions patiently, but Lisa noticed he seemed uncomfortable with the attention. When the last delegate finally left, she approached him. "How does it feel to be famous across the galaxy?" she asked with a smile. Murphy's response was typically understated. "Uncomfortable. I just did what any properly trained human would do in the same situation." "That's exactly the point," Blake interjected. "The aliens are amazed because they realize their own training focuses on using abilities for personal or species advantage. Human training focuses on using abilities to help others." 3 weeks later, the first alien students arrived at human institutions throughout Earth's colonies. Young Vorthak learned about military honor codes. Zephyrian scouts studied human rescue techniques. Chitauri individuals practiced making independent decisions while still coordinating with others. The program was not without challenges. Many aliens struggled with concepts like individual moral choice and personal sacrifice for others' benefit. But gradually, success stories began emerging. A young Vorthak named Kreshtar used his plasma breath to create a firebreak that saved a colonial settlement from wildfires, despite the danger to himself. A Zephyrian lightbender called Silandra used her invisibility abilities to rescue trapped civilians during a building collapse, working for hours without recognition or reward. Most remarkably, a Chitauri individual designated Worker Designation 7742 chose to disconnect from the hive mind temporarily to make a moral decision that saved lives but violated collective efficiency protocols. Murphy received regular reports about the exchange program's progress, but he continued his normal duties as if nothing had changed. When reporters asked for interviews about his role in transforming galactic society, he politely declined and referred them to the diplomatic corps. The only sign that anything was different came in his private communications with Admiral Harrison. The Admiral's last message had been brief but significant. "Jake, the alien military observers are asking if you would consider teaching a course on human tactical philosophy." The course title they suggested was Leadership Through Service. "Interested?" Murphy's response was equally brief. "Send me the curriculum requirements."